Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim, and our guest today is Devin Miller. So Devin, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us where you live and what you do.
Yeah, that's probably a much simpler question, or appears on the surface to be a simpler question, but I'll try and condense it a bit. So I'm located in Utah, just north of Salt Lake City, in a smaller, used to be a smaller farm town. Seems like everywhere else it's growing, but that's kind of where I grew up, and as well as where I'm located now. As far as kind of what I do, so I would say day in and day out, I'm a patent and trademark attorney, intellectual property. So I work with a lot of startups and small businesses to help them with patents and trademarks. Beyond that, I am also, I would say, a perpetual entrepreneur. So I also do several businesses outside of that, including the first one I started was when I was in doing my JD MBA. So I ended up getting 4 degrees, engineering degree, Chinese, MBA, as well as a law degree. So I entered a business competition, started a business from that. That one I've since exited. So I've always kind of pursued kind of 2 different things. One is the entrepreneurial aspect and doing several different startups and small businesses. But day in and day out, I'm intellectual property and help a lot of startups and small businesses and side hustles with patents and trademarks and other things.
Awesome. So what made you want to be a trademark attorney?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, a number of things. And I don't know that it was just a specific, hey, light bulb goes on, I have to be a patent and trademark attorney. But it was more so I was kind of getting to the end of engineering school. So as I mentioned, at the end of engineering, I was doing electrical engineering as my undergraduate. Kind of as I was getting to the end of that, I was kind of came to the conclusion, I like engineering, but I don't want to be an engineer, in the sense that I like working on projects, figuring out how things work, building things and whatnot. On the other hand, the typical engineer, or the typical path for an engineer, is that you are a small cog in a big wheel. You work on a small project for a long period of time. It takes you quite a while to work your way up, and you're kind of stuck on that one project during that period of time. And that outlook didn't really excite me. In other words, I like to work on a myriad of different things, or work on a lot of different, projects and kind of have that more entrepreneurial itch. And so I said, okay, well, if I'm not going to be an engineer, then, kind of the perpetual, what do I want to do when I grow up? And so kind of with that, I came to the conclusion, hey, a good path that, I guess I stepped back, and I know it's a longer answer to the short question.
Sure.
But I kind of said, hey, I like entrepreneurship, doing startups and small businesses. So maybe I'll go that route. Or I would, the other one I looked at was, intellectual property, which is you get to work with a lot of products, you get to work with a lot of startups and small businesses, but you get to see a lot of different things as opposed to one single thing. And so that's kind of where, as I was making that decision, rather than going one route or the other, in other words, either going down the legal route or the MBA route, I just said, hey, I'll split the path and go down, rather than path less chosen or the path or more chosen, I'll just go right down the middle. And so that's where I got the JD MBA, did both the degrees, and really have been doing that ever since. So it's kind of that, hey, I like engineering, figuring things out, doing entrepreneurial stuff and intellectual property, patents and trademarks. I got to work with a lot of cool startups and small businesses, hearing what they do, working with them, and kind of be able to participate and going down that path. So I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, for sure.
That's kind of right to where I'm at today.
Yeah, I think patents are always interesting, right? Because I think, or at least most people in business watch Shark Tank or have watched Shark Tank, and they're always asking, do you have a patent? And in some industries, I think it's not as relevant, right? But when would be a good time to actually get a patent?
So I would back up the question just a little bit.
Sure.
In the sense, when you listen to, I love Shark Tank. I don't know I've watched every episode, but pretty close. I'm sure I missed a few in there. But to enjoy watching it. And, typically, depending on the type of business, most businesses, I put it at 90 or 95%, one or more avenues of intellectual property apply to them. Now, just as a quick run through, intellectual property is kind of an umbrella term. So it kind of encapsulates multiple areas of the law. primarily patents, trademarks, copyright. So patents are going to go towards an invention, something that does something, it has a functionality. So that's, a product, and that can be software, it can be hardware, it can be, I've done everything from boat anchors to software to, electric vehicles to wearables and everything in between. That is going to go for patents. Trademarks are going to go towards a brand. So if you were to think of Apple, M&M, Pepsi, Coke, all of those, a lot, they also have their products, but a lot of their brand equity is built up in that brand itself. And so with that, when you're looking at, doing a brand, it's going to fall under trademarks. And copyrights is going to be something more on the creative nature. So if you're to think of a book, a painting, a sculpture, a movie, a podcast, a lot of those different things are all going to fall under intellectual property. It's going to fall under copyrights. And so when you're looking at it, first question I'd ask kind of before is, when are you going to, should you pursue? Well, kind of depends on what you're looking at as far as what you're going to pursue. In other words, are you a product business and are you really focused on being or creating the next iPhone or whatever breakthrough technology? You're going to look at patents. Vice versa, if you're going to be the next, Pepsi or Coke or M&Ms or whatever, you're going to do brands. You're going to do trademarks, and vice versa. You look at it and say, no, we're going to create the next breakthrough. I love Yellowstone as this is a TV series, so I'm going to do the next Yellowstone TV series. And so I'm going to do the copyrights. And so with that in mind, then you're going to, figuring out what you need to protect kind of preempts what, when you need to protect it. But really, I don't know that there is a definitive rule of thumb as far as when you have to protect it, with a couple exceptions. But generally, my rule of thumb is when you're approaching what I call the ouch factor. So in other words, hey, if you've invested enough time, money, and effort that if somebody to come along, knock this off, copy what you're doing, would it have that ouch factor? Would it hurt the business? So in other words, if you're saying, hey, we built a brand, yeah, if somebody else would have come along, it wouldn't be fun. It'd be a bit of a hassle, but really we could, pivot and adjust and it wouldn't be the end of the world. You probably haven't invested enough time, money, and effort into the brand to provide that value. But on the other hand, you're saying, no, we've done a marketing campaign. We got a lot of client loyalty. We've done a lot of SEO. We've done a lot of X, Y, and Z and built out that brand. Then you're going to say, now that you've invested enough that it makes sense, you want to protect it. Or as you're approaching that kind of threshold. The last thing I'll just say is there are, particularly within patents and trademarks, there are some deadlines you have to be aware of. Patents, anytime you put anything out in the public from the first instance, whether it's putting out a website, white paper, offering it for sale, going out and pitching it, you have a year from the time that you put it out in the public that you can file a patent on. You missed that 1 year window, you've now just donated it to the public. Trademarks don't have a definitive deadline, but it's a first to file system, meaning whoever files for it first is going to be the presumptive owner of that brand. And so if somebody else, has the same idea, similar idea, files for it first, you've now just lost or potentially lost the rights to that brand, and now you're going to have to rebrand. So I know that was a much longer answer to a very short question, but those would be kind of some of the thoughts. Is one, kind of figure out what you need. Two, kind of go by the ouch factor, and then three, be aware of some of those deadlines that you'd be looking at.
Right, but are there ever situations where you as an attorney see where somebody wants to file a patent, you're like, it doesn't make sense? I think at least me coming, from the software space, lots of software is the patents. I'm not sure how much it protects certain software because, lots of software, software companies copy other companies. And yeah, so I'm curious kind of more about that.
Yeah, I'll fully admit I'm probably coming at it from a bit of a biased perspective, but you can certainly get software patents. So a lot of the companies that I've worked with in previous firms before starting Miller IP Law, as well as a lot of the companies I work with now, are heavily invested in software. So as an example, I did a whole bunch of work with Intel. Intel has a ton of software. They invest heavily. Same thing with Red Hat. If you know the Linux operating system, now they have a different approach as to how they enforce their patents, but they have a huge war chest. 90% of what they do is going to be in the software realm. I work with augmented reality, where it's a lot more on the software side with augmented reality. Hardware is a lot more matured. And so a lot of those you can get a patent on as far as the software side. Now, to your question, does it always make sense? Well, a couple of things, and this would be really across the board, whether it's software or anything else. You're going to be looking at really a couple standards for patentability. So one of those standards is, I guess there's three standards. So one is novelty, second one's obviousness, third one's abstraction. Novelty basically means, has anybody else previously invented this? Anybody else has invented it, you can't get a patent on something that's already been invented. So if you're to say, hey, I want to go and I want to copy it or knock off or mimic this product, great. Maybe you can go do that in the marketplace. Maybe they're not protected, or they're open and they're in the public domain, but you can't patent it. Obviousness basically means, okay, maybe not one person's invented this, but if you were to take two or more things already out there, all you're doing is really taking those and putting them together in an obvious way. Again, you can't patent something that's just an obvious combination once out there. The third one, and this one is predominantly with software, is what's called abstraction. Abstraction basically means, if all you're doing is taking something that somebody can do in their head or on pen and paper and putting it on a software product, you can't get a patent on it. So very simple example, 2 + 2 = 4. Yeah, can be the first person that programmed it into a computer, 2 + 2 = 4. You can't get a patent on that, in the sense that people have been doing that in pen and paper, doing it in their head for a long period of time. Just because you happen to be the first one to stick it on software doesn't mean it's patentable. So really, if you can meet those three thresholds of hasn't been previously invented, isn't an obvious combination of what's out there, and it's not something that people can do in their head or in pen and paper, you're open to get or pursue a patent on it. The other question you have to ask is, the other one is, let's say you do get a patent on it, is it valuable to your business? In other words, just because you can get a patent doesn't mean you should. In other words, if you're to look at, say, as an example, hey, I could go out and do this. Really, the software, take augmented reality, or I'll take AI as an example, just because it's a growing field. If on the one hand, you got a fundamental patent on, hey, this is the underlying way that AI is going to work, language models, training models, and those type of things, this can be very impactful to the industry. You better go get a patent on it, because it's going to be the fundamental for the next 20 years of how everybody's going to do it. It's going to be very valuable. So on the other hand, you're saying, hey, we're going to do this kind of slight add-on variation, something that's a little bit new and unique, has a specific use case. It's probably only going to be really relevant for a year or two out there. And then it's the market's going to move on, probably ellipse, go in a different direction or that. Then while you could get a patent on it, by the time you get it through the system, by the time you get it, the actual patent, it's already, it usually takes at least a year and a half or typically 2+ years to get a patent all the way through the system. If it's going to be 2 or 3 years is the shelf life of the software, just because you can get a patent doesn't mean you should. So you kind of have to weigh several of those different factors. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, for sure. So what would you say is the biggest challenge that you face in your day-to-day as an attorney?
I could take that from a whole bunch of directions. I would say, from the perspective, I'll take it from the perspective of working with clients. I can talk about going back and forth with the patent office, working with examiners. Some of them are awesome, some of them are terrible. But the biggest thing, and I would say it's harder within a startup or small businesses, a lot of them recognize on the front end, hey, we are setting out to do a brand. We are setting out to build the next iPhone or augmented reality or whatever it is, or we're going to make the next best Yellowstone, or, pick your favorite movie or book, your genre or whatever. And yet you're saying, hey, I'm a startup, I'm a small business. How do I balance this with, I don't really have a budget? That was often not from my perspective of, hey, if you can pay me, I'm happy to help. If you can, I understand. And when you are able to, and it makes sense, you're welcome to come back, but I can't work for free, because otherwise I would be out of a job. But that one's kind of a hard one. And I get it I've done startups and small businesses myself. I get that there's a lot of demands, especially a startup or small business. There's always more things to spend money on than money to spend. But that one's always a hard one I feel for them. I think they sometimes have really cool inventions or technology or products or brands or things that they're building. And on the other hand, it's so, I still have to charge for what I'm doing. I still need to make a living, support the firm, and those type of things. And that was oftentimes kind of a hard balance, because on the one hand, I feel for them. On the other hand, I have to look out for the business itself.
Hey y'all, it's Dan Melnick, the CEO of Zing. And I wanted to share a special offer for all of our listeners. Right now, if you need software development services, we'll give you 2 weeks of a free trial. Do you need to update your website? Do you want to build a mobile app? Do you want to update something that you've been working on for a long time? We've worked in a high-level technologies like AI, machine learning, blockchain. So shoot me a text, 817-874-2208. Thank you.
100%. Yeah, it's always challenging, especially in the startup ecosystem. So I'm curious, like you mentioned, obviously, that you're like a serial entrepreneur. You have other businesses. So can you just kind of talk more about that? Like, what else do you do in terms of startups or other ventures in your day to day?
Yeah, so it varies. I mean, I don't know there's a specific right or wrong, but give you an idea of some of the other businesses I've done. So probably the first business I did that it took me 10 years to finally get to a point where I made an exit. So finally made an exit from the business. Not going to disclose it was a, 7, 8 figure exit by the time. Now, I didn't put all that money in my pocket. There are other people involved.
Sure.
But if you look, that was the first one. That one was, so kind of rewinding, and then I'll give you the other businesses. That one for a long period of time, that was a wearables product. And really where it started is, as I mentioned, I was doing the law degree as well as the MBA degree, and there was a business competition. It's kind of one of those flyers you see, hey, come together, meet other people you don't know, come up with an idea and enter it into a business competition. So I went to the meeting, didn't know anybody, formed a group, and we did something for the first year. It was, to make gym bags less smelly. Didn't go anywhere. It was a fun idea, but was never going to, have a great degree of traction. But we came back the second year and we said, hey, what are we going to do? And we came up with some really stupid ideas like self-packing boxes and other things that would have never worked. And I had just gotten into really doing marathon running. I'd done I think it was my second marathon. I said, hey, one of the mistakes I made was I didn't drink enough. And I said, hey, I needed to drink more, needed to stay better hydrated. I simply failed. And, because I got dehydrated as I was running, it made the last bit of the marathon more painful. And so I said, with that, wouldn't it be cool if you could monitor your hydration level? And this was back before the days of Apple Watches or Fitbits. It was nothing. I think there was one wearable out there. It was huge. It was clunky and it didn't really do much. It was just basically a heart rate monitor. And so I said, wouldn't it be cool if you could do a wearable to monitor your hydration? So went home. My dad was a electrical engineer as well. He'd done a ton in the medical industry, got together on Christmas, built up the prototype, entered in the business competition, took second place. I was a little bitter because we should have taken first, but bought out our other people that were in the business competition with me and started that as a business. And I did that for 10 years up until this recently, a few months ago, made an exit, sold that off and exited from that. So that was my first, I would say, real business that I did, or more legitimate. Some of the other businesses that I do, so I started a food truck with my kids. It's called the Bear Den. I wanted them to have an opportunity to kind of interact with customers, learn how to run a business, kind of do something with them and have fun doing it. So that's a food truck. We converted an Airstream into a food truck, and we do build your own popcorn, and during the winter also build your own hot chocolate. So do a food truck. Also have a small religious products business. Started with another partner and bought them out. And that one's also turned into a family business. Last one that I haven't figured out how to do a business around, but I have a lot of interest and want to figure out how to do business around, is I've started doing an orchard with a lot of different fruit trees. That one's currently in the hobby phase, but as soon as I figure out how to make that into business, I'll add that into the fold as well. So
amazing.
A few different things that I enjoy doing all across the board, and kind of I find something that I enjoy that is fun or gives me additional purpose, and I kind of fold that into the mix.
Amazing.
So one of the other ones one of the other ones, and I know you were starting to ask me a question. The other one that I built out is a SaaS platform, so software as a service, and that is for lead generation within social media. And so it is one where it's automated fashion, integrates a lot of software, technology, AI, machine learning, and it will go out and automatically find posts that people are engaging on different topics, and then it will engage with them in the comments section automatically in order to interact with them and to find leads that way. So that one built it out for the law firm, still using it as a law firm, but then expanded it to be a software platform to use for other businesses. So
is it
as much as I can remember the run through.
Is that one like only for LinkedIn or other platforms as well?
No, so it is for LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter/X, and Nextdoor, Reddit, and Quora.
What's it called?
Leading to You. So if you just go to Leading to You, leading,
check it out. That's cool.
And then TO for TOYOU. You can check that out, and that's just a software platform as well.
Awesome. So what would you say is the one biggest piece of advice that you wish you knew before you got started in your entrepreneurial career?
I hesitate because it's kind of one of those where I don't know if I wish I'd known, in the sense that I think that there is a high degree of being naive when you go into doing a startup or a small business. Across the board, really doesn't matter what this business is. Even if you have previous experience in participating in a business or being a early stage in other businesses, it's hard. It's going to take a lot of work. It's always, everybody there here is going to take more time, money, and effort than you anticipate. And you say, okay, I'll take what I think and then I double it. Well, it usually is even more than that. And you're going to have to just look at it and, say legitimately, this is going to take a lot more time, money, and effort than I anticipate. It's going to be difficult. There's going to be ups and downs. It is rewarding. It is fun. I enjoy it. And there's also a lot of crappy stuff that happens along the way that you're not going to enjoy. And so it's kind of one of those where I don't know that I wish I'd known that, because I think if everybody knew what they were in for at the front end when they started, nobody would ever actually do their own startup or small business, be an entrepreneur, because they're going to see all of the difficulties and hear all that. And they're going to say, that sounds like way too much work. And so it's one that I wish I'd known from the perspective of it helps you to prepare. On the other hand, I probably want to be naive because otherwise I would have never done all the stuff that I did.
Makes sense. So if we're going to have this conversation again in 1 year from now, where do you see things going for your businesses?
I'll continue to grow them. It's an evolution. There have been some businesses, I highlighted the ones that I'm currently doing, which by default means to a degree they've been successful and or continuing to go, which also negates. There's also been, especially early on, there were things that I did that never took off, that I invested some money in that never worked out. There's one software business that, I invested over $100,000, thought it was awesome, and I still think it is, but it just didn't have the acceptance within the marketplace that I was hoping for. And so where do I see them going? I mean, for me, I'll continue to, a law firm is here to stay. I'll do that. I'll continue to expand it, grow it. We do a number of things, everything from content marketing, podcasts. We build out software to make things better. We integrate AI into it. We build it out. We continue to adjust the model, look for DIY tools. We did webinars. And so all of that with the law firm, continue to do that. And I think that'll just be a matter of continuing to look for areas to expand it into. On the other businesses, it'll be one where, generally if I like the earlier stage. And so it's more fun for me to figure things out, to build it, to get it to a place that it works and that it's operating, and tend to start to taper off with losing interest. And so if I were to be self-honest, probably as I do that, I'll probably mature some of the businesses I'm working on to the point where it starts to taper off, lose that fun of the early stage. And then I'll look to exit, look to sell it, look to do something else with it, and probably move on to the next thing. So it'll be kind of a mixture of being an attorney. Some of the businesses I'll continue on, some of them will reach that stage and I'll look to exit and find something else that I enjoy.
Awesome. So if somebody watching this wanted to reach out to you, do you mind sharing your website or social media, best ways to get in contact?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a few ways that people can reach out to me depending on how what they want to reach out to me. So generally, if you want to schedule just a one-on-one meeting with me on the intellectual property side, or really on anything, but is primarily geared towards the intellectual property side, you can go to strategymeeting.com. That links to my calendar. You can schedule a free consultation. We offer a free 15-20-minute consultation. So if you have questions on any of the intellectual property aspects, you can go there, strategymeeting.com. Second one is I'm not very active on most of social media. I know we have a presence, we do different things, we use the automated software, but where I'm most active, meaningfully active, is more so on LinkedIn. I like LinkedIn, has more of a business perspective and aspect to it. So if you want to or connect with me on LinkedIn, you can just go to Meet Miller, so MEET, and then my last name Miller.com, and that will link you right to my LinkedIn profile, and we can connect that way. Last one is if people just want to generally check out the law firm, kind of get more information, kind of see what we offer. We're pretty transparent. We have all of our flat fees there and a lot of educational information, a lot of different things. They can just go to lawwithmiller.com. So quick run through. Want to schedule a one-on-one strategy session with me, strategymeeting.com. LinkedIn, go to meetmiller.com. General website, lawwithmiller.com.
Awesome. Well, Devin, thank you so much for your time today.
Hey, I had a pleasure. It was fun to chat with you and appreciate you having me on.